Sorry.
Is the sheer thought of me even speaking that funny to you, Amanda?
Actually, yeah.
It's gonna go well. Hello and welcome back to Cellar Road Podcast. My name is Adam. I haven't been here for a while. I was gently alive for a little bit there, got a little sick, but we're back, and that's all that matters. We're so back. So really excited to be here and to be joining Anna today.
Yes.
As we talk about an absolutely incredible bottle of wine and a little bit more about where it comes from. So today on the table we have a Malbec from Catena Zapata. This is a 2021. And today we're going to talk about wine in Argentina. We're going to talk about Malbec in Argentina. And we're going to talk about this beautiful wine that we have in front of us.
Yeah. So this is Catena Zapata Malbec Argentino. This is a blend of two different vineyards that sit over 3,000 feet in elevation up in the mountains. And one of the vineyards is about 30 years old. And one of the vineyards is coming up on like 95 years old. So we have old vine Malbec in Argentina here.
Do we ever?
Oh, that's so yummy.
Yeah, it's very yummy.
That is delicious.
Yep, and that's ready to drink.
Yeah. This is like the fun part with Malbec and tannin, is because tannin-wise, Malbec can be like a pretty thin-skinned grape. And so the tannins tend not to be super aggressive up front. And so this is one reason why growing them at elevation in the mountains helps, because they get closer to the sun, more UV rays causes the grapes to be thicker skinned. The thicker the skin, the more tannin compounds you get in the grapes.
Yeah, it's so funny that to think about. I know this is kind of a hits bong says something comment, but it's so funny to think about the fact that one of the most important components to growing wine at altitude, especially for thin-skinned wine, to consider as a winemaker is the fact that the wines will protect themselves from sunburn.
Yeah.
So they will grow thicker skins so that their fruit doesn't burn.
Yes.
Which is it's insane to me, but it's also really cool, and it's a fun component to wine growing at altitude and something for winemakers to think about. But if you're growing something like Malbec or Pinot Noir at a higher altitude, you got to consider the fact that there's going to be a little bit more of a tannic structure than you're used to.
Yes.
From wines grown at a more traditional altitude.
Yes. Also, kind of what growing at altitude does, and you get this in this wine, is that it's still pretty acidic. It has plenty of room to lay down and continue to age and develop some tertiary notes and to become this really beautiful wine. But what growing at altitude does as well is that it gets colder the higher up we go.
The fluctuations are crazy.
But it also, on the whole, is going to extend the growing season. But because it's colder, the grapes are going to hang on to acid better as they are continuing to ripe. So we can get a grape that becomes ripe while still being incredibly acidic and hangs on to acidity. So not only are you getting more tannins when you grow at altitude, typically you're also getting wines that are going to be more acidic because the temperature is colder.
Right, yeah. Right, and to your point, I mean, the higher acid allows this to, the tannic structure, even with a thicker skin, it's still fairly gentle.
Yes.
And that acid is going to be what's going to carry this wine as you age it. And it is already remarkable. I think it will turn into something stunning if you allow this to sit down. Yeah.
I mean, to me, it just smells like licorice. Strawberry, licorice. There's some menthol note to it as well, but it's black cherry.
Yeah, and it's almost like there's almost a candied component to it, right? So it has that lovely jammy cherry thing going on.
Yeah.
And but there's some leather and some smoke and some there are some of those more complex flavor profiles on this wine already.
Yes.
Which I think it's not young, but it's certainly not aged. And so again, I think with the growth at altitude, you have wines that can age well,
yes,
and beautifully. They don't have to. You can drink them right now, and they're going to be delicious, and you're not going to feel like I should not have opened that bottle of wine.
Yes.
Which I think some of us have experienced the regret of opening a bottle of wine way too early, way before we ever should have touched it, and knowing it right as it, right after it hits the palate, knowing for a fact that you should have let that thing go for another 5 years. This is not that case here. No.
The soft, delicate tannins that you just get in Malbec to begin with.
There's almost like some cocoa notes in there too. Oh God, this is great.
I know. This is truly, truly just beautiful.
So Anna, talk us a little bit through, Argentina, obviously, civilization in Argentina is a tale as old as time, right? So people have been living in Argentina for as long as we've been people, but grape growing in Argentina is not an ancient practice.
No.
And so talk us through a little bit about how, especially, grapes, but specifically Malbec and the production of wine started in Argentina.
Yeah. So when it comes to the wine world, there's typically two titles that we use to talk about wine and where it's grown in the world. We have the old world versus the new world. The old world is Europe, where the Vitis vinifera, which is the species of grape that Malbec is, where it originates from. And then we have the New World, which is where the Vitis vinifera was brought by immigrants. So the history of winemaking in Argentina is actually quite old, and it's almost the story of immigration to Argentina. We know it's been growing there for, I'm not entirely sure on the date, but at least since the 1800s, if not longer than that. But they brought over a ton of grapes. Like, it wasn't just like Malbec, which we now think. They brought over Cabernet Sauvignon. They brought over a few other ones, and they were just growing. And kind of like the name of the game in Argentina for a really long time was just to like mass produce wine and just make wine in mass. Just so they had a lot to consume and a lot to drink. And it was really uncertain as to how good the quality of wine from Argentina could be for a really, really long time, until we get to kind of Nicholas Catena, who was really inspired by what was going on in California in the 1980s, which is where we saw the fallout of the Judgment of Paris, which happened in the 70s, where Napa wines in a blind tasting beat some of the best French wines. And then Napa was really committed to making...
In France, no less.
Yes. They beat them in France.
French judges chose California wines over their own French wines from their own historical
and we're
homes.
convinced that they were French, which is also the fun part.
Right, yes.
And so Nicholas Catena was, I believe, at Berkeley and was kind of seeing what was going on in the 80s. And was really inspired by how California was now committed to making world-class wines, but making wines that were better than the French.
Right.
And so when he came back to Argentina, he was looking at what was going on in Argentina and was convinced that Argentina could also make world-class wine.
Right. And his grandfather had immigrated from Italy and had started to produce wine in Argentina in the early 1900s. So he was coming back he was viewing this all from the lens of being a part of a family that made wine.
Yes.
So he came back kind of with an agenda.
Yes. Yeah. He really came back with an agenda to make the best possible wine that he could. And something that they were doing is that they were kind of growing just in the valley in places in Argentina, and they weren't growing at altitude yet. And they were growing grapes that weren't necessarily Malbec. They weren't necessarily like Cabernet Sauvignon, these other types of grapes. They were growing grapes that were a little bit easier to grow, grapes that were incredibly vigorous to support this mass market. It's also really hot in the valley.
Yes.
And there are certain grapes, Malbec is one of these, that likes hot weather, but it really prefers warm weather. Like, it grows great in warm. It likes a little bit of moderation, and that's just because it's thin-skinned. But you do want it a little bit warmer because it is a mid to late ripening grape. Yeah. So it does take an entire growing season to actually get ripe. So like, knowing this about Malbec, Nicholas Catena then started planting both Cabernet Sauvignon, but predominantly Malbec at altitude for the first time in history in Argentina.
Right.
And then he just started experimenting. And again, talked about what altitude does for wine. One, it's going to cool it down. Malbec naturally isn't really tannic.
Right.
What altitude is going to do is allow thicker skins. It should increase total tannin in the grapes, but then it's also going to hang on to acidity. But because we're higher up and it's going to be a little bit more predictable and you have more direct access to the sun, it is going to prolong the growing season. And so you can get Malbec ripe in a cooler climate than where it was originally growing, which is what Malbec would prefer as a grape. And so now you're growing super high quality wine,
Right.
or super high quality grapes, which have the potential to make high quality wine.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Malbec in its history was grown at significant altitude. I think it was consistently grown at elevation, right? Just at the elevation of the winemaker. This was kind of the first time that we had somebody looking at it and saying, okay, I know all of these things about how this wine, the construction of this grape, I understand it's thin skin, it's low tannin. Let's see what happens when we put it up on a mountain. And I mean, we should all be glad that he did that.
Yeah, because here's like Malbec historically has made world-class wine.
Yes.
So like it's originally a French grape found in southwest France, discovered by the Romans. So like this grape, Malbec is over 2,000 years old.
Right.
Its homeland now is considered the Cahors in France, where there it's called like the black wine, where you can like even see here like how dark and inky it is. But in Cahors it goes under the name of Cot. But that's still Malbec. It's just a clone of Malbec. There's about 10 different clones of Malbec in Cahors. But it's actually a Bordeaux varietal. This is what it's like most known for. And before the 1855 classification of Bordeaux from Napoleon III, Malbec was grown almost as much as Cabernet Sauvignon was. And so all of these like first growths and all of the top estates in Bordeaux were using Malbec almost to the same level that they were using Cabernet Sauvignon. Then, however, in the 1870s, phylloxera makes its way into Europe and wipes out a significant portion of wine, one of these being the Malbec grape. And so Malbec like significantly went down in total production throughout all of France because phylloxera just came and wiped it out. Then in like 1956, I believe, there were 3 weeks during the winter in which like it was below freezing, just 3 straight weeks of like I know it's like negative 25 degrees Celsius. It was just freezing, and it killed basically killed all the Malbec, and then they didn't replant it.
Right.
They replanted it with Merlot. Merlot's a little bit easier to get riper than Malbec is. It ripens sooner. Yep. So like in a climate, a maritime climate like Bordeaux, in which like the growing season's really unpredictable, you can make your bet on Merlot in a way that you can't on Malbec.
Right.
However, it was still in Argentina.
Right.
And what's really cool about Argentina is that Malbec was introduced in like the 1850s, pre-phylloxera. So the Malbec that's grown in Argentina, for the most part, is pre-phylloxera. And I know the Catena family does at least a significant portion of this, where it's not grown on rootstock, and it's actually grown on the vine itself. And at least one of the vineyard sites here is from the Catena cuttings, which is from the pre-phylloxera vines, which is really fun and really cool. You don't see much pre-phylloxera. So it's almost the case that the vines that we're drinking here, or the vines that produce the grapes that make the wine that we're drinking here, are actually original
to pre-phylloxera Malbec.
Than what you actually have in France. And in Cahors, and where it's like currently being grown,
which is crazy. I mean, that's a crazy thing to think about. And if you think about industries, like it's just something that's difficult to compare to any other industry. To say like this is more original than the original. And it's an ocean and a half away, essentially. So. And at that time, they had to go all the way down and around. So, it was quite the haul. But what I think is interesting about Malbec, or what I think about is interesting about the Catena story and what has happened in Argentina, moving away from just mass producing jugs of wine, which some still do, but opening up this lane of really highly competitive, really well produced, beautiful wines with a lot of intention behind them. It kind of reminds me of the story of Savoie, where this new generation came. They produced really kind of cheap, €1 for a liter type of wines for a long time, and then this new generation came in and was very interested in growing wine in a more intentional way.
Yeah.
And now in Savoie, you can buy beautifully produced wines that are exceptional quality. And thanks to their history, a great price point.
Yeah.
The same is true about Argentina. You can buy beautifully produced wines at pretty exceptional price points as well for what you're getting.
Yes.
For the level of quality, for the ratings, if you believe in them.
Yes. Yes.
For what you're getting, you can get something of exceptional quality for a great value. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's because somebody said, let's put it up on that mountain and see what happens. Because he knew enough to know that it might be successful.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Malbec, or let's talk about Catena Zapata today. So, it was founded by a man, Nicola Catena, who immigrated from Italy at the beginning of the 1900s, early 1900s.
Yep.
So we're now 4 generations removed from the founder of the Catena estate, and now 2 women run the estate, Laura and Adriana, sisters. So they've kind of taken their father's agenda and they have advanced it.
Yes.
They are producing exceptional wine. Everything. I mean, even their house label is still compared to its peers, high quality.
Yes.
But then you get up into these single or 2 vineyard blends that are single vineyard or 2 vineyard blends that are just crazy good, and the quality is there. The intentionality is there, which I think is something that's really important when you're thinking about quality wine. So, I mean, it's cool that we have moved into a woman-owned winery.
Yeah.
And they've done nothing except exponentially increase the prestige attached to their house.
Yes.
Which is so cool.
Yeah. Because something that like Laura Catena in particularly did is that she created the Catena Institute, which is specifically dedicated to trying to make the best possible wine that it can and to express terroirs from certain regions. And so this is just part of an overall project that the Catena family has in trying to produce the best possible wines that can be produced from wherever grapes are being grown.
Yep. Well, they're doing it here.
Yeah.
And so with that, I'd love to review this wine. So, I think we have our delightful little rating system.
Yes.
So I said earlier, if you believe in the points, if you don't, right? So one of the side projects of the Catena family is the Enemigo label, the El Enemigo label, and the Gran Enemigo labels. We tasted the Gran Enemigo, 100 points from 2 different wine critics.
Yep.
We concurred that it was indeed exceptional. But more importantly, kind of what I was alluding to earlier, for its price, it was something that was just extraordinary. And so I'm excited to review this one as well. So
the first one, is it a well-made wine?
Is it well made?
Yes. Yeah.
So we were talking about extended growing seasons. We're talking about putting it up on a mountain.
Yeah.
All of the things that they did to Malbec made it harder to produce.
Yes.
It made it more time intensive, labor intensive. There is no way you're growing at altitude at 3,000 feet without machinery and it not be well produced.
Yeah. Yes.
It has to be, or it's just neglected, right? So and
Correct.
that is not what they're doing. So they are on the other side of that spectrum. This wine is handled with deep care.
Yes.
So I definitely give it that star.
Yeah, and you can tell with just how well, even with a wine this young, how well everything is integrated.
Yeah.
It's still really bright and fresh and fruit forward, on the palate. So it does could use a little bit of time to settle into itself, and allow like the flavors to become a little bit more integrated and to just be settled. But this is like, it's just so beautiful, and it is a pleasure to drink.
Yes.
I forget who it was, but no, it was Robert Jones. Robert Jones told me, because I've judged a few wine competitions with him, and he's like, you know, like the point of like a good wine is that you want to come back and take a second sip.
Yes.
And I want to just continue sipping this wine.
I have heard that phrase from him cross his lips a couple times.
Yes.
Yeah. This is definitely that. Yeah.
Second star, is it worth the price? At market value right now, it comes out between like $100 to $115. For me, I think this is an easy star. I think that the quality that you get at this price point, I would expect to be paying maybe 3 times the points, or 3 times the price.
Yeah, yeah. I think I lean towards your assessment. However, I will say, I think for Argentina, this is expensive.
Yes.
Not that I'm opposed to, not that I wouldn't buy it. Absolutely would, especially after having this. Like now that I've had this wine, I'm going to go buy this wine, right? Or if I see this wine, I'm going to go after it, and especially knowing kind of what the price point should be. But I think there are examples of wine within the same style that would be cheaper. That would not be $115.
That's
that
true.
I may point people toward.
Yeah.
First, as like because you're skeptical.
Yes.
I think people are still skeptical, and they shouldn't be. And I'm hoping we dispel the skepticism here, because I think people are still skeptical about buying wine from places like Argentina or Chile, or Portugal that are still red wines that are 3 figures. I think that's still a point of skepticism.
Yes.
So I would maybe give this a half a star, only because I think there's still a good amount of healthy skepticism amongst consumers around expensive wines from certain places. I hope it's our job. I hope what we do in this is that we dispel that. Go buy this wine.
Yes.
Right? Like go buy the wine.
Go buy the wine.
But I would maybe half star it, because I think there could be other examples that I might point people to get them to open their wallets and buy this wine later on down the road.
Sure.
So we'll go with your star.
We could do half star.
Wow.
Wow.
Compromise. Okay.
Compromise is the foundation of all great relationships.
That's right. And Anna, ours is great.
This is amazing. The third one.
You're like,
the third star is notability.
Easy.
We just
In my mind, it's easy.
Yeah.
Just run it back and listen to what we
listen
said.
to everything again.
Star. Next star.
Next star. Rarity.
Rarity. I mean, this particular label, I think, is exceptionally difficult. What I like about it is Catena is pretty accessible.
Yes.
This label's not.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's a rarity here.
Yeah.
And I think made even more impressive, more rare maybe, because of the fact that the house labels are everywhere.
Yeah. And like this is old vine.
Yeah.
It's old vine.
Right.
We're dealing with some pre-phylloxera cuttings with this. Like you don't see this.
Right. This is a star.
Yeah.
And then finally, can it age?
Yes. There's zero doubt in my mind that if you are to open this wine in 10 years, that it would be even more beautiful than it is now.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think this is one of those wines where you're like, okay, let's lay this down and we'll see it in 35 years. Like this isn't one of those.
Yeah.
But it absolutely has aging potential. It has enough aging potential for the attention spans of most people.
Yes.
And I think that's for me the marker. And so yes, a star.
Yes.
So we're winding up here 4.5 to 5 stars, depending on which side of the table we're sitting on.
Yeah.
It's an exceptional wine.
Yeah.
Everybody should go buy it.
Yeah.
If not, go buy Catena. They make some gorgeous wines.
Yeah.
They may have some beautiful whites.
Yeah. Another important wine to look out for from Catena is anything from the Adriana vineyard, which is the highest altitude, I believe the highest altitude wine that Catena does.
And that's mostly white, right? That's mostly.
They also do Malbec up there too.
Oh, cool. I think I've only had. I think they do Chardonnay.
Yeah, they do Chardonnay, which is delicious.
That is a stunning wine. Yes, absolutely.
The White Stone.
There's there's the Chenin Blanc. They do a Chenin Semillon wine, the white clay.
Yes.
That is a fabulous bottle of wine as well.
Yes.
And no, that's nowhere near this price point. We're down in the 30s, 40s.
No.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or we're going to be towards the 100. We're going to be between 50 and 100.
Oh, I thought it was.
No, we might even be over 100 for some of them.
Yeah.
But
I think that
we're in the
Shannon's
higher
sending
end stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So look for basically what we're saying here is look for the Catena vineyard specific wines.
Yes.
You will not go wrong.
Yes, and then they also do a Nicola Catena, named after the father Nicola, who came in inspired by everything, which is actually a Bordeaux style blend that has Malbec in it, and Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc, I believe. I believe those are the only three, and so it is like a traditional pre-1855 classification through 1855 classification up to phylloxera as to what you might see out of Bordeaux.
Right. Well, it's more original than the original. Like, you want to taste what Bordeaux tasted like before the 1850s?
Yeah.
Go by Nicolas Zapata.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
That's what it'll taste like.
Yep.
So, So in conclusion, beautiful wine. Argentina is a region that everyone should enjoy. White or red, white or red enthusiasts. They also make some delicious sparkling wines.
Yes,
in
they do.
Argentina. I mean, gorgeous sparkling wine. So, go buy some.
Yeah. Buy some.
Go enjoy some. And in the meantime, cheers.
Cheers.